But when the scripts arrived, well, after I got the part, a truck or van pulled up, and this secure package arrived. They put it on the counter in the kitchen. It's a big one. That wasn't dramatic, right? That's it. And you opened it up, and it was the 3 screenplays. And they had on them a cover script with a false production company title on it. And there was a string around it, tied up. This was not what usually happened on movies. Usually, a guy throws up, there you go, there's your script, and you flip through it, and it's no big deal. Now, and you open it up, and my name with a serial number was watermarked on every page. You knew you were part of something big just from the paper that was sent to you. And then you show up, and the first thing Peter did after, we went right to the studio from the airport, and he took the actors who had just arrived and took us to the Weta workshop, where all the special effects, practical effects makeup and armor and stuff was. And they walked us through, and they showed you just miles long of orc armor and urukai rubber skin and the faces. And then we went into the foundry where the actual swords were being forged, literally hammered out and forged. And by the time you finished that, and then when you just couldn't believe what you were seeing, you went into another room and they showed you the miniatures, which are bigger than this room. And they were working on this stuff for 9 months, a year, whatever. And every, this Minas Tirith, you could climb out, you could look at every single, take a magnifying glass to any part of the miniature, and it looked photoreal. And then when you just can't believe, George Lucas never came up with anything like these miniatures. And I was a huge George Lucas Star Wars fan who grew up on the making of and seeing the miniatures that he made, and these were just blow away. Then you walk in and they go, okay, we're going to show you some of the digital stuff. They give us their digital dog and pony show, they called it, and you start looking at how they've been writing code for the software to have, if you're going to film an army, a wide shot of an army, they were able to do in the past little kind of rudimentary figures that could kind of move back and forth like you'd see in a video game. And they could create that in the computer and show it. But now what they have done is they'd advanced it to such a state where each of the 20,000 characters on the screen had its own algorithmic brain where it could choose how to raise its sword, or depending on what weapon it had, and how to fight. So you watch these things and they're clashing, and no matter where your eye would go on the screen, there was the battle happening, a unique own signature battle. And then and then they show you another thing where they say, well, CG technology, before you could show kind of a forest from afar, but if you pushed in closer, it would kind of blur a little bit. The brush strokes, the CG brush strokes or whatever would kind of it would kind of bend out. And then you get closer and closer, and they're like, we wrote this new software to do leaves. And they show you all these different trees from all the different worlds, and all the different leaves on the different trees, and what they look like in a storm, and what they look like when they're in that fall foliage. And then you go home and you try and get some sleep. You can't believe what you just saw yesterday. And then you go to show up at the wardrobe place, and they've got these incredible designs for you, like something out of the 1920s or 1930s in Hollywood, with these incredible wardrobe designs. And then you do a fitting, and then you walk into another room and you see there's 100 people sewing and knitting and designing, and with leather, what do you call those? Leather making, and and every day was like that. And then you get in a car and you go, and you've got the late great Bob Anderson, the sword master, who taught Errol Flynn and Douglas Fairbanks how to sword fight, and choreographed the Darth Vader, Ben Kenobi fight sequence. And they're like, okay, you're going to come every day for 90 minutes, and you're going to work with Bob for the next 6 weeks to get your sword training right. And then you go to another thing on the stage, and they say, okay, there's all these portable offices, and you're going to go in that one for an hour a day, 5 days a week for the next 6 weeks. And you walk in there, and it's two dialect coaches, one from the Royal Shakespearean Company and another one, this Irish linguist, something like that, language science person, Roshi party. And so we'd sit there and they had all the different species up on the walls. And then each species they played for us all the different sounds and the accents that they designed for them. And then you look at the hobbits and they go, okay, the hobbits are going to be, Samwise is going to be sort of a West Country. He's going to be a West Country hobbit. And then Elijah's going to be more of a received pronunciation English. And then Billy's going to have a Scottish. So they designed the regions within Middle Earth, within the Shire. So, then you 5 helicopters would show up and take you to the tops of these mountains, and then you'd show up and you'd go on a given day to 7 or 8 different stations around Wellington, buildings where you'd go in and they'd have, this incredible, Osgiliath ruins set up, or the Weathertop, or whatever. So, yeah, we had a pretty good idea. It was spectacular.